The seventh studio album from the American-born underground alternative hip-hop artist Ian Matthias Baffitz, aka Aesop Rock, returns after a 4-year break away from the scene with his new project, The Impossible Kid. Back is the very verbiage-heavy, at times undecipherable lyrics and themes that are common with Aesop's back catalogue. Although giving a brief description of what each song is about, something that he released on his Twitter feed in the weeks leading up to the release of this project, there are a few tracks where either the use of language is so overblown that without these descriptions you'd be left wondering what the hell Aesop's talking about, or you'd get it but you somewhat expected something a little more tangible in comparison to some of the other tracks on the album. Conceptually, this album deals with nostalgia, growing up, and Aesop's dreams and aspirations and how they came to an abrupt end. Friends and family, in particular his two brothers, day-to-day experiences that allow Aesop to ponder about certain aspects of his life, and a moment midway through the album where he has a meeting with a psychologist where he's sort of rejecting any sort of help yet is open to his own faults, admits them, and resigns himself to having another meeting with this person. The theme of nostalgia opens up the album with the track Mystery Fish, a song that Aesop claims to be about the area in which he grew up in San Francisco, sharing it with well-known drug users, street gamblers, hanging out with pals in clapped-out vehicles, dining out in local cafes and chowing down on God only knows what. A good starter, but it is highly overinflated with its overuse of language, which Aesop admits is one of his flaws later on in the album. The song Blood Sandwich, one of this album's best tracks, is a reflective piece dedicated to his two brothers, recalling the younger one playing in a baseball match before being halted by a gopher, and his elder brother's love of industrial and gothic music, which caused some disturbance, particularly with his mother. A heartwarming moment on the album, and one that sticks out with the listener. The track Rings also delves into Aesop's youth, about his desire to become a visual artist as a young man, yet abandoning his passion, and reflects on what could have been if he had stuck with his dream. It is one of the most upfront tracks and is less needing of some decoding, but the track benefits as a result. Not saying that Aesop has dumbed down in order to become understandable, but the overbearing use of the complex language and terminology he uses needs a break every now and then. A trait that Aesop addresses on the song Shrunk, personally my favourite on the whole album, where Aesop is having a one-on-one meeting with a therapist who has difficulty in diagnosing Aesop, and that's primarily because Aesop isn't exactly playing ball, admittedly doing so deliberately. And it's not in a way where Aesop is on a completely different plane to this therapist, but simply because he finds the whole process a complete waste of time, to the point where before his session he intentionally makes a mockery of signing his forms before going in, yet through his admittance he agrees for further sessions. The notion of seeking psychological help can also be found in the previous track Get Out of the Car, which focuses heavily on the death of one of Aesop's closest friends, his attempts to move on from his angst via moving into the woods, getting away from city life and concentrating on this album. This side note getting its own recognition on the track Rabies, before ending the track on forcing himself to seek professional help or face wallowing in his sadness and stagnating in life. And on the track Kirby, which is a dedication to Aesop's cat, a recommendation by Aesop's therapist. After years of trying to get through to him, she randomly suggests he buys a cat, which he does, and it turns out to be a good thing ultimately. Along with Get Out of the Car, Aesop's dealings with mortality comes up on tracks like Water Tower, where he spouts about decaying, feeding the soil and flowers around you, and reflecting on his own unempathetic ways as a child. Not only in the chorus, painting no rules on a water tower, basically saying fuck it all, but also by failing to look after his pet lizard and letting it die out of neglect. Aesop does throw in some stark imagery, but I feel it could have done with the Rings formula of reflective, simple lyrical delivery rather than the overblown wordplay that can come off as slightly pretentious. Then you have the unrelated tracks such as the highly enjoyable Lotta Years, where Aesop recants a conversation he has with two people working menial jobs yet feels detached from them, as he feels that they are miles ahead in their lives than he was at their age. The song Dorks, which goes into Aesop's sense of self-isolation from large groups of people. The song Supercell, which doesn't really have any sort of form. It sort of tells a mini vignette about a ghost roaming in a fantasy type world, with Aesop describing it on his Twitter page as a Christmas song, which is kind of hilarious in and of itself. The song Tough is apparently about being off the rails and deciding to finally get help, and I say apparently because this reeks of pretentiousness that without Aesop's description I don't think anyone would be able to tell what this song is about. The song Lazy Eye reads as Aesop coming to terms with his age, the anxiety of getting old and doing his best to maintain his physicality against the aging process. And finally the song Defender, which is another song dealing with multiple issues all at once, which include, I don't know, they're hidden somewhere in here. It's another crammed track that is once again, for the most part, lyrically pretentious. Instrumentally, the vast majority of this album is packed with punchy drum beats that are backed by a myriad of electronic effects as well as some DJ scratching on some of the songs, but there are some moments that do give these tracks some individualism. The horns and synths on Mystery Fish are subtle yet add a nice smoothness to the track, the deep bass synth on Rings with ascending and descending synth lines, the deep bass line on Dorks, Get Out of the Car which has an electronic riff along with the bass, and both Molecules and Supercell where it's given more of a groove to it, Rabies with the blaring electronic effect, synths and bass piano notes, Blood Sandwich with its tubular synth opening, and Shrunk with its murky and dirty undertone which is kind of the same story on Kirby yet with more of a buzz going on. For all of my gripes with some tracks being overstuffed and bloated lyrically which can become obnoxious at points, I would be lying if I said that I didn't like this album. Personally, the first 10 tracks on the album are super solid and have plenty of good going for them. I just feel that the final 5 tracks don't necessarily match the fire and the enjoyment as the first 2/3. I like that it's emotive, I like that it's personal, how Aesop puts his heart on his sleeve and spills about life, about being mired in his 30s to 40s mindset about growing old, dealing with his problems, and the methods he goes into achieving some form of clarity and happiness. And if this is the result of such, I can certainly think of way worse ways it could have gone. I think that this is a highly competent album with many things to like about it, and I highly recommend giving it a listen. Overall, I score this album an 83 out of 100.